Hello, everyone. Welcome to African Esquire TV on WCC TV. We're here right now with our This Week in African News segment. This is going to be a smaller segment that's going to be a separate video from the commentary that I will give. The goal is to basically post these on Wednesdays and post my normal longer videos on Mondays. So that's a new format change I'm trying out to see how it works with my schedule. So we're just going to jump right in. We have some stories that are happening throughout the African diaspora, the African experience, and some things that I think that everyone might be interested in. It seems in African experience, France is one of the most hated imperialist countries. We're very aware of French colonialism in a present matter. We're also very aware of the CFA franc and also the French military operations that have been happening throughout the African continent. Well, right now, France is in election season. And believe it or not, as much as you may hate Emmanuel Macron and think that he's the worst scum of the earth, it's important to understand that this whole anti-African sentiment inside of the French country is something that's not just him, but it's throughout the political processes. And we're going to see this inside of the election cycle that's happening right now in France. So this guy whose name is Zemmour, he has threatened to seize African leaders' assets if they don't take back immigrants. Zemmour is a 63-year-old former political commentator. He has made immigration and security the center of his campaign. And he said this week that if he is elected to presidency of France, he would create a ministry of immigration that would deport hundreds of thousands of immigrants over the next 5 years. He, when asked what he would do if countries refused to basically accept back these African migrants, Zemmour told a news conference, the heads of African countries have homes in France. We could seize them, you see. There are a number of foreigners who send money through Western Union. That's an important part of the budgets of these countries. We can block them. I call those ways to pressure. Zemmour insisted on Wednesday he was the only presidential candidate in the race who could unify a fragmented French right. That's important for you to understand. Emmanuel Macron, right now, he is the current French president, but this is whole anti-African sentiment, and particularly when it comes to African migrants, is something that is really throughout the French political process. It's throughout the French history, French institutions, French media. It's something that's very prevalent inside of that country. So understand that this is not one individual, but this is a systemic issue when it comes to Africans. And obviously, the big thing right now, compare this to the treatment of Ukrainian migrants. They're going to basically try to seize hundreds of thousands of Africans who have fled the countries that have been looted and raped really of their resources by countries like France, and as a result have fled into Europe, and France being one of the locations. They're going to send these people back, meanwhile welcoming with open arms people who are fleeing from Ukraine, because these people obviously have deep anti-African sentiment, deep racism that is really driving the policies that they're implementing. It seems the British monarchy is having a real public image issue right now. And of course, it's not our monarchy, it's not our prince, king, queen, or whatever. So when I say Prince William, understand it's Prince William. This is the English prince, but Prince William has suggested that the family supports Caribbean countries' decision to separate from the monarchy. Now, this obviously didn't come from nowhere. This came after the Caribbean tour disaster that happened, where they thought they could stroll through different formerly colonized and currently neo-colonialized countries that are part of the British Commonwealth and go through for a photo op. However, Africans throughout the Caribbean are very much aware and awakened to the reality of colonialism, and they want answers. They want not just apologies, but they want reparations for the things that were done to them by the British Crown. Now, at a governor's reception in Nassau on Friday, the Duke of Cambridge spoke of the beauty he and Duchess Kate have seen around the islands, and he said they are both incredibly grateful for the warm welcomes they've received. He later dove into heavier topics and alluded to the ongoing protests across the Caribbean, in which locals are calling out British history of colonialism and racism and asking for the royal family to apologize, to make slavery reparations. Although William did not apologize on behalf of his country at Friday night's dinner, he did earlier in Jamaica. He did say that the royal family stands by any country that wishes to part ways with the British monarchy. Next year, I know you are all looking forward to celebrating 50 years of independence. This is for Jamaica. And Jamaica, well, no, actually, that was the South, and Jamaica celebrating 60 years of independence this year, and Belize celebrating 40 years of independence. I want to say this: we support with pride and respect your decisions about your future relationships. Relationships evolve and friendships endure. And of course, this is not a friendship. I mean, England was not a friend to the Caribbean, to the Africa, to the Americas. England was very much a purveyor of violence, a purveyor of looting, stealing, burglary, any type of theft word you can think of. This is what they did to African people. So friendship should not be the word he's using. If anything, we should be hoping that these severances are not just severances of the Commonwealth system, which is a system that should absolutely be abolished because it is a colonial system. It's not just ceremonial, there's also legal components where these countries are legally tied to the British Crown. But also, we have to also keep in mind the economic aspects. So, is the English purveyors of economic genocide to these places that has just pillaged them and stolen their resources? Are they also going to be held accountable on that front? That's what we should also be keeping in mind. But definitely, as I said in my last video, kudos to our people in the Caribbean who are very much awakened to the fact that this is not our monarchy. This is not our queen or our king or prince, any of that. These are people who are enemies to our liberation, enemies to our history and our present, and therefore we cannot allow them to not be held accountable inside of this present age. Speaking of Jamaicans, an interesting proposal is being floated around the Jamaican parliament, and it's one that has US Jamaicans, US based Jamaicans happy or potentially wanting to see if they can have more representation back at home, which I think is important and interesting to analyze given the fact that we have similar proposals that have been thought of for not just people who are nationally connected to a certain geographic region, but for our ethnic heritage and our ethnic connection to the African continent, African diaspora at large. So U.S. Jamaicans welcome a resurrected proposal from opposition's Mark Golding, a rehashed proposal by the opposition leader that the Jamaican Senate be expanded to include representation from the diaspora. This is the Jamaican diaspora. Has struck a chord among nationals in the United States who want to see it done. The diaspora leaders are expected to raise the question with Prime Minister Andrew Holness this Friday when he is hosted by Jamaica's ambassador to the United States, Audrey Marks, in her growing Let's Connect series. And it's very interesting. This is very similar to what you see African leaders doing with the diaspora, the African diaspora. Dr. Alan Cunningham, the Global Jamaican Diaspora Council representative for the Southern United States, which covers Florida, North and South Carolina, and Georgia, described the proposal as a very good recommendation, which has my wholehearted support. The diaspora has invested in and continues to invest heavily in Jamaica, and we would welcome any opportunity to be a part of the decision-making and policy implementation of the country, he told the Jamaican Observer. So this is something that's not just happening as far as the African experience, the African diaspora globally, but this is something that's also being considered on national levels, whether Jamaicans who leave their country to go to the United States will actually also have some type of representation at home, something to keep the conversation going, because what does African diaspora look like that's not connected to an African continent? This is something that's a question that people often ask. What use is Pan-Africanism if we don't have that type of representation or don't have that type of direct connection? There's another question that people are asking. And so we want to see more concrete ideas being formative, particularly from the people, and not necessarily from the bourgeoisie politicians who could just be doing this as a way to get more tourism. We want concrete actions being driven by the people on the ground. So this is, I think, something to consider going forward. Sudan erupts as millions of Africans go hungry due to the Ukraine war and sanctions. Thousands of workers and students took to the streets in cities across Sudan in protest for rocketing food and fuel prices. Now, I know we're all feeling increased food and fuel prices. Really, African people, wherever we are, right? We're always being put inside this position where we're dealing with things the worst. But just listen to this increase. Food prices are 100 to 200% higher than they were a year ago, and inflation stands at 250%. In the capital, Khartoum, last week, the protesters were met with tear gas and stun grenades as they came within 200 meters of the presidential palace. About 200 about 20 million people are likely to be at emergency or crisis level of acute food insecurity, which doubles the 2021 figures. The situation has worsened dramatically due to soaring global grain prices, the shortage of foreign currency, and drought in some parts of the country, fueling escalating protest movements demanding an end to military rule. Like many countries in Africa, Sudan sourced about 35% of its wheat imports in 2021 from Russia and Ukraine, and now must find an alternative supplier demanding far higher prices. And this is really one of the major drawbacks of globalization. Globalization puts us inside of a position where we're dependent on outside entities far away from us to basically continue on as usual, that their political process does not be disrupted, and that we continue the supply chains basically being delivered to us within a certain amount of time. Whenever something happens of critical crisis inside of one of the people who were dependent or the countries were dependent on, we can easily see something like this happening where African people are basically being driven to the worst situation, that is starvation. I mean, how much worse can it get where you don't know if you're going to have something to eat? And Sudan already is going through a lot right now. I mean, this is after, things were projected with COVID-19. And then on top of this war. So it's like, how much more can the people take? So we understand the protest and definitely, draw solidarity with those who are most affected, who are going to be the masses. I really think that this has to be a wake up call. The Ukraine and Russia crisis for Africa, that the globalization has never been sustainable for us. It's always put us in a position where we're going to basically be in the worst position if something pops off. Keep in mind that other countries are not going to be as affected as Africa or other places that are in the global south. Keep in mind that other countries, they have been storing food, they're preparing, they're basically putting it away. The US is saying they don't think that they're going to have food shortages at all. I don't know if that's true, but apparently it's not going to be anywhere as bad as where Africa, because Africa is always the place that has been open for the colonists to come and exploit and draw us into these international relationships where we're begging for grains. I mean, the most disappointing part about this is that we know that as a continent, Africa is very rich. We know that prior to colonialism, there was this type of dependency didn't exist. But now we do have a situation where it does exist, and there's really no alternative systems in place for the people to not have to starve. And so we have to start thinking concretely about what it looks like to truly have internal policies that are going to protect us from this in the future. Stand in solidarity certainly with our people in Sudan throughout the African experience who are going to suffer because of these systems, these global systems, because of the exploitation of the African continent. And definitely, just stand in solidarity and keep your prayers for our people as we're going through a tough time, because we're all feeling it right now, but some of us are feeling it a lot worse right now. Lastly, just a brief update on what's going on with the nomination of Supreme Court nominated justice. Who knows if she's going to be a justice? Katani Brown Jackson. I think she'll be nominated, but I mean, there almost always are nominated. But it's interesting that she has had so far 2 GOP senators who oppose the Supreme Court nomination, and this was reported last update on Tuesday, where Senator John Thune has said that he will not support her nomination. And just for context, this is an African woman in the U.S., and she basically would be the first Black woman in the Supreme Court if she were nominated. Thune's objection while expected, is the latest indication that Republicans are hardening their stance on Jackson's nomination. He said, "I enjoyed my meeting with Judge Jackson and respect her achievements, but I cannot in good conscience vote for a Supreme Court justice whose record indicates that she would allow her personal political opinions to shape her judicial decisions." GOP senators who repeatedly cut off the federal judge while she was seeking to explain her sentencing decisions. The senator's comments seemingly referred to the aggressive tone taken by Senator Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, and Josh Hawley of Missouri, with GOP lawmakers pressing Jackson on everything from critical race theory to our sentencing for sex-related cases. A lot of people were very upset at the treatment of Judge Jackson by these, particularly by white men in the Senate. Of course, I never like seeing any Black woman, man, child, disrespected in this type of way. But I also understand that this is America. I mean, I think some people get confused because you get in certain circles where the white people that you're around are not going to talk to you a certain way, or they're more careful about how they say things. But then whenever you go to broader America, you find out this is not okay, this is not what I'm used to. Which is why, I think it's just important. Don't get confused. I mean, some people want to treat this as if it's isolated. No, this is a country that's built on that type of disrespect. Now, of course, the other issue is that this is another example of identity politics being utilized to have the Black community hyper focused on this one individual judge who's just going to fall in line with the Supreme Court, vote like the Supreme Court. She's not like a radical judge, obviously. I mean, Biden chose her. She's just going to be a typical justice, assuming she's actually put inside of the Supreme Court, meaning in actual substance is actual laws, things would not change for us. We would still be in the condition that we are in. Our cities would still be left in the conditions that they are in. Our economy still depleted while they're sending all of this aid money to Ukraine. You have people who are suffering in the United States, especially Africans, suffering without any type of economic remedy. Like basically the government's like, we're going to take your tax money and give it over here. And all of this is happening, but we're supposed to hyper focus on this individual that we know will have no effect on our day to day. No effect. The hood's still going to be the hood. I mean, just like Barack Obama had no effect on our day to day. The hood was the hood with Obama. The hood was the hood with Bush. Same thing with Trump. None of these individuals are going to change what this country is because it's backed by a system, which means that we don't put too much focus on this. I haven't put too much focus on this nomination, but I think it is important to understand that that there's a strategy behind this. The strategy is that we see this Black woman being humiliated publicly by these racist senators, and we basically put all of our hope into her being nominated. She gets nominated, and then we get to have a party. There's going to be a big party, I'm sure. And everyone's going to talk about how we're moving in the right direction. And then Joe Biden gets to go on the campaign trail and tell us all how, hey guys, I did this for you. Vote for me again. Even though, again, for the masses of our people, or the conditions have not changed, things have worsened, and we're actually inside of a position where a lot of us are really unstable like we've never been before. These are the tricks, the politics in Washington, D.C. And so that's just what I want us to keep in mind when it comes to these types of identity politic tricks that are being used in order to distract the people. That is it for today, everyone. Do me a favor, if you will, please go and click the link down below to my Telegram channel. Everyone, I have at least 1,000 people to 2,000, depending on the video, maybe 3,000 that will watch a certain video. And I only have 300 people who have actually joined my Telegram channel. And the reason why I tell you all join those channels is because it's important, because YouTube has been very much shutting channels down, and you want to have alternative means to communicate with the people. So if you actually click that link, you'll get updates anytime I do a video. Also, I'm going to put all the articles that I would normally put in the description, and I'll put it in the description, but I'm going to wait a couple of days. I'm going to put in the description a couple of days, but I'm going to put that inside of the Telegram channel so that gives people an incentive in case you want to read from the articles that I spoke about today. But it's very easy. It's just a link. You click it, you download it on your phone. Anytime that I need to communicate, or if something happens and something gets shut down, direct line of communication. So decentralization is something that we should be thinking about. And of course, always go to wechargecolonialism.org. There you can subscribe to our newsletter, you can donate, you can read articles, you can watch videos, you can do a lot of things. So please do continue to support there. With that, I will see you all next week.